All right, everyone, go ahead and take your seats, please. Joe will get started on his clinic. I do have one very, very brief announcement. We do have a new member over here. They unfortunately showed up a couple of minutes late. They went to the wrong building, and we can understand that. And if you would please tell me what you model, where you live.
My name's Shay Lilford. I live in Cumming, and my scale is N scale.
All right. So operating groups near Cumming, come see him. All right. Fantastic. Yeah, they went to the school instead of the church. And anyway, that stuff happens. All right. Now we have Joe Nichols, Dr. Joe, anyway. He doesn't care. He's going to be talking coil detectors, car cameras, and drones. This ought to be really kind of neat because he's going to talk about all kinds of geek stuff. Anyway.
Okay, so like a lot of things that I have, when I started out, I had one idea, and then when you're talking about technology, the minute you turn on the internet, you find out everything you thought looked really cool is now obsolete. And everything changes so fast that you can't talk about tomorrow, because if you thought of it, everybody else is already selling it somewhere. So when I started this off, I had a little bit bigger thing. And then the more I got it, it started getting a little out of hand. So I pulled it back in. And then I went to the National Narrow Gauge and found out that my dreams were things that people are already doing. So it became, where am I going with this? So anyway, I'm going to try and pull it back in together enough to get something done. The handout I've done is mostly if you want to sketch things on it. So just since I've been here, how many people, since they had that talk a while ago, went out online on their phones and ordered Arduinos? Rats. Okay, I was hoping all of y'all would have. Then my talk would be a lot better. And then when we went to Seattle, we went on the layout tours, and you have these niche people who just pop in. Seattle, in case y'all don't know, is electronics, but I was still kind of surprised at how far ahead some of them were from where I think we are. So anyway, the handout's there. If you want to sketch notes on it, part of what I want to put in is going to be on the slides here. Toward the end, my slides get a little bit rough, but George Carlin, many years ago, how many people remember George Carlin? Yeah, we are really old. Okay, so many years ago, George Carlin went out, he said something like, my job is to go home, think up goofy stuff, and bring it back here to you. And so I went home trying to think of what I could come up with there. All of us have something to teach, and the Piedmont clinics are typically given by members for education to tell you about things that interest you. Okay, that's of course not true. We're here to tell you about things that interest me. So we're going to teach you about things that we're interested in. Tom would love to have you know what interests you, and then he could get a speaker, because it's a lot easier to find a speaker for a topic than to find a topic. So if you think of things that you want to hear about, put them on a note, let Tom know, and he can find a speaker. So tonight we're going to hear about what interests me. Disclaimer, I don't sell anything, and I don't have invested anything in model railroading that has ever made any money. Most of the information I have is geared toward HO. Most of the prices I have are from Quick Looks. I'm not saying I'm repeating anything, but in the past several weeks looking online, and if your cell phone is on, please turn the speaker on so we can all hear what y'all are talking about. So what is the future of home layouts and operation? We've had several innovations invented to revolutionize the hobby of model railroading. Some catch on, some not so much. Some of these slides I've reviewed several times, some of them not so many. In the past, many of us started out with AC 3-rail or DC layouts and equipment. The trains were easy to wire, easy to troubleshoot. They were fairly cheap. A teenager himself without the internet could connect and operate a layout. So we started off electric and magnetic uncouplers. This was really cool because you didn't have to twist and grind them apart. They didn't require physical contact with trains. You could just put them across there. It'd go across the grooves or across the magnets. It would open. Great innovation. Then we had wireless throttles. Now you can walk around without being tethered to one part of the layout. You could walk around or other people as well. And then we had DCC. Then we developed computer chips that would go into each of your locomotives that turn the lights on and off and allow the locomotives to operate independently on the same set of tracks. That got rid of the old blocks where you could only have a 12-foot section, only one train could operate on that. Every locomotive on your track would now, not now, but now require a computer chip, and you would need expensive throttles to run the trains. Obviously, nobody wanted, actually everybody did that. So anyway, it was expensive, didn't make a lot of sense, a lot of technology, really hard to grasp on. They had all these F1s, F2s, FU things on there. And it took a while for everybody to get it, but everybody loved it. So then we had sound decoders. Now all your locomotives that have decoders in them, you got to rip all those decoders out. Now you got to fit some big speaker in there. And all of your locomotives need that are more expensive, and speakers would be required. Obviously, nobody wanted to do, well, nobody actually did catch on, come to think of it. That one caught on. So some of these did, some of these didn't. And then JMRI came along. Now it's easy to program your locomotives. You can store the program, shove it right back in less than 30 seconds. Easier cell phones can now be used. They're dirt cheap, cost you $11 per used cell phone. Easier to set up remote operations and everything. How many people here use JMRI even somewhat routinely? Not a lot. So that one almost, but we're getting there. It's getting better. And then LCC came along, and this is 8-10 years ago. And so each time you put something into your layout automatically knows exactly what it is, puts it into the programming. You put a signal in, it wires it up, everything in there. It has its own address. All of your turnouts go in automatically. You have like how many times faster bus? It's like 20 times faster bus station there. How many people have routinely started adding LCD layout? Okay, maybe that one didn't catch on, but we'll give it time. So, so tonight I thought I would take a peek at what I think the future will hold. Some may become instantly popular, like some of those more or less. Some may take some time to become popular, and some may only be adopted by small groups of people. So I'm going to talk about block detection, mostly because I already had it on the title, and it was hard to get the first thing on the title wiped out. Then the other thing that popped up in the middle of my talk, Bluetooth decoders, then about remote operations, and then POV. Don't blast out. How many people know what POV is? Yeah. So anyway, moving along. So block detection. Where are the trains? The ability to see where the trains are on the entire layout from one spot. Typically, most people subdivide their layout into areas where one train would reside. So if you have a passing track, you got to know where both of them are. If you have 20 feet of main line, one spot, they're out there somewhere, but you divide it up to what will help you operationally. This diagram, the section of the track the equipment will be drawing power is located. This can be done by a wired module inline, by adding coil induction, or by simply blocking the light on a train. So detecting equipment drawing power. That means every car doesn't show up. If you lose half your train, some of it can be sitting out. I operate on one of the best layouts in here, feeling like everybody was staring at me. The train came out of the tunnel, and my train was now pushing 3 cars in front of it there. And so I just tried to get them out of the way so I didn't get blamed for something there, but somebody lost a train. So the basic function is to measure when current is flowing through the circuit by creating a field circuit around another wire. And so you've got the DC block detectors, NCE, Digitrax has them, DC Specialties. So the costs usually are going to be somewhere around $5 to $15 per block. But like we're talking about with the Arduinos, you put it in, it works. You wouldn't expect to go back and have to pay for it over and over and over. So for the price of the decoder, you could get most of the block detection for a fairly large layout. And so the second option is by light detection. And so this is show you where the locomotive is going under across one photocell, then it goes across the other, then it goes through the end, and then once it clears, that area turns off. So you can actually follow anything moving on the rails at that point in time. Some advantages, some disadvantages. So it depends on what you're trying to show where. These can be bought, built there like the one on my left, or you can get buy modules that will wire all these things up. Like Tom was talking about with a 64 IO, you can put all these things in there and then set them up to show you where things are block the light all over the place on your layout. So another option is detecting radio frequency device on each piece of equipment to be detected. Didn't have that in my initial slide, but you can take these little specks of stuff shown as tags and put them in there, and just like the RFIDs that they use, badges and stuff, as it goes by, it can tell you what is where for everything passing the decoder. You got to put these little tags in each one of these things, but y'all just replaced all these decoders that work perfectly fine for really expensive decoders. So who knows? Maybe one day we'll get every piece of equipment will have a tag, and you'll be able to pull up on your computer and tell exactly on your layout where everything is, kind of like the prototypes may do. So like everything else in this talk, the question is how much time, how much thought, and how much work do you want to spend on this part of the hobby at the expense of another part of the hobby? So if you like building models, you're probably not going to want to put in 14,000 miles of wire. But you can get your thing and you can set it up with each of these has different types, and you can have it where your dispatcher can sit there and run the whole thing from one central point. But like the bottom slide shows, it's going to take some wires. So tonight I'd like to peek at my idea of the future. Some, again, may become instantly popular. We've crossed off block detection. So there's several reasons developers might choose Bluetooth as opposed to Wi-Fi. I actually learned what IoT stands for this thing. But first, Bluetooth requires physical proximity. You've got to be moderately close, not by our standards, but moderately close to the signal to get it. And there's no real possibility of somebody remotely attacking and grabbing what you're working on. And Bluetooth requires much less energy than Wi-Fi, so it works better for low-power devices such as basic sensors. This is getting kind of jargony, geeky, but a little bit further. So Wi-Fi is much faster than Bluetooth, handles a lot more things. So when you're deciding one from the other, both wireless technologies for connecting your devices, but they're quite different. Basic idea is Wi-Fi, everything layout, everything running back and forth, put it all together, your locomotive, your throttles, your signals, everything goes through, everything can run through Wi-Fi. This device to that device. So if you think about it, if you have your cell phone and it's not the other things on that Bluetooth signal, just that one thing. So Wi-Fi interconnecting many units, and it may or may not with Wi-Fi be connected through the internet. So you can send it out and have other people tying in, same thing you're working on. So Model Railroad has the Wi-Fi. It'll control your throttle, switch machines, decoders, sound modules, lighting, signals, Bluetooth, one-on-one. Throttle to decoder, dispatcher to a speaker. So Bluetooth, one device, one connection. And so just a diagram there. So you've got your Wi-Fi will plug into all kinds of stuff that we're used to. Bluetooth is going to just get one. So now, how many people have heard of Bluenami? Yeah. So anyway, when we were out at the National Narrowgauge, the guy is really pushing that. You can't get soundtracks talked about anything else other than this thing. And so this thing is going to run you about $136. I saw some on there. Your regular sound decoder is going to be about 106. And the idea is you'll still have your train, it'll still run out there, but your signal and your throttle will be between you and that locomotive. It won't go through the track. It won't go through your command stations. It'll just be you to there, and that's it. That offers some benefits, but it's going to come at a little bit of a price. So they're pushing it, and they're actually starting a forum group to kind of get all this figured out, because I don't think they had the surge they expected, mostly because we don't understand what the hell they're talking about. And also from my standpoint, the only version they've come out with is a 2200, and it's bigger than any of their other decoders. Lets me out. So you still get power out of the track. Now, you're not a dead rail person, are you? Okay, so we won't go into that. But, Right. Yeah. So the dead rail people are the ones who don't have track power, like your G people. Then you can just carry some big battery around with you, and you're totally free from doing track. You can power the Blue Nami, but if you're going to have, lights and your motor and all those stuff Blue Nami's going to do, there's no reason not to draw it off the track. You got 18 volts that it's riding on, or 12, whatever is riding on the bottom of it. It doesn't make a lot of sense if you're powering everything else in the tracks live, why you would convert this one decoder to a battery. But you can run your batteries. They just suck power off there. When you're running all the other decoders, they need your LocoNet or whatever signal coming through, so they have to be attached. But this one just needs power, and it can do the rest of it. Then you put your keep alives and all the other things there to kind of keep your power system stable, and your speakers don't cut on and off and all the things. You must be talking about why mine doesn't work. But anyway, so yeah, as long as you've got a constant power supply, you can do it. So, and this one would take a constant power supply as well. So it would also, the keep alives and whatever the other ones are, it would also need some kind of constant power source. So we're going to get Bluetooth decoders. Uh-huh. Have to do what to the locomotive?
Do you have to stay physically close to the locomotive to use it?
140 feet. So I don't know how often when you're operating, you want to be 33 feet away from the locomotive you're operating, but you don't on my layout. I can tell you, I don't want you 33 feet away. But yeah, if you have to go out to the mailbox and you're still operating the locomotive, no problem. So it will.
Think Soundtracks actually says their Blue Nami will go up to 100 feet. It won't reach 240 feet, I believe.
And that's going to be for reliable operation. The Bluetooth technology will go a lot further, but you really don't want to lose your locomotive. But in my mind, I don't even like them going through tunnels. I like to be able to see my locomotives there, so I don't have three cars of my cars on somebody else's train later on. So it'll work from ways away there. And we're going to get to some other things here that are even more, not ridiculous, even more valuable. So the Blue Nami has been tested. JMRI. Sorry, we're switching over now. So JMRI tested on everything. That is the Blue Nami. Internet Explorer will run. So nothing. JMRI. I'm sorry, I'm jumping between these. So JMRI, plug it in. You've got it to run. You can switch and run JMRI through a web server. How many people have y'all have ever, not just the cell phone things and not just hooking it through Wi-Fi, how many of y'all have had remote operation of your layout by somebody who is not physically in the house? Okay, so that's where I see things coming there. So the idea, when we went out to Seattle, we walked into this guy and he didn't live near anything. And it took us way too long to get out there. And he had this fairly small layout. And I said, so what do you actually do with your layout? Well, I have operating sessions about every 3 weeks. Okay, and how is that going? He said, well, I set up 4 Apple cell phones. I click them on, I feed them into my computer, and then I turn on the layout, and I have about 7 or 8 operators who dial in, and I'm basically just the brakeman. I just uncouple cars, and they all have that comes up, tells them where to go, and they just say, I'm over in such and such a town. I need to cut out my 3rd car, and then I walk over there, and he is the only person in the house. And he's got 7 or 8 people operating his layout who aren't there. And I don't think so. That doesn't, for some reason, a lot of the social aspect of it kind of gets lost to me. It's about as exciting as a Zoom meeting for me. But I will tell you, if I'm over at Dad's and I'm running an operating session and Dad's invited 8 people for 9 positions and 6 show up, we have a problem. This is not going to work if you don't have enough people. So you pick up the phone, you call your friend in Denver, because it's going to be a little bit earlier in the day there, and you tell him, will you dial in and run for me tonight? Here's your switch list. I'm not going to put you in the yard. I'm not that brutal. Put you on the main line, may even give you a passenger train. You just take that spot. And he goes, okay. And he dials it in and he can run. You can talk back and forth. He stops. He cuts cars. He's got the cameras in there, or don't jump ahead of me. He's got the cameras in there so he actually see online. He can switch to whichever camera he needs to see his train going here. And how many of you have watched these YouTubes of people's layouts where they're actually doing that kind of stuff? And how many of y'all, the only one I think I've seen, there's some guy who's got this little bitty, like a 4x10 layout, and I've run his layout several times. I don't know where the hell he is, and there's never anybody but me running. But you can just go online and start running his layout just out of the blue. So anyway, you stack JMRI. For those of you who aren't using JMRI, basically we walk up with JMRI, we plug it into one of your UP5s or whatever your connection is, and now you have JMRI. That's exactly how hard JMRI is to use. You plug it into your network, and now it works. And so there's really nothing that happens to your layout. You do need a little bit of electronics, but you can get those little Raspberry Pi that I've talked about before. And for around $50, $70, you can plug it in, and then you can whip out your cell phones and you have the connectors and all. But for LocoNet, you have to put in a PR3, 4, something like that. For NCE, you have to plug in something. For MRC, you plug in the back. But for a fairly reasonable price, you can put JMRI in, and that allows you, without a whole lot else, to do some remote operation. So viewing, well, one of the things, quick, easy, dirty, just stick it in there. You can go out and buy a security system and put the cameras in. For about $200, you can get 8 cameras. You can record your operating session if that's cool to you. I try to not remember a lot of mine. But you can put it all in there, and then you can connect that up to the internet, because most of the security cameras now you can access from wherever you are in town and see what's going on in your house and set it up pretty easy. Doesn't take a lot of work. Set up, everybody's already done the thinking for you. So wired cameras, and you've got the old USB cams that are out there. Most of this is air in this thing there. There's not a lot of electronics in it. Or the other thing, even more dirt cheap, because they're out there, you can either go out and buy or walk to the back of somebody's car and pop it off, but you can get rear automotive cameras there. And this is actually kind of a big clunky one because it has 4 LEDs built into it, but you can get them with real low light, so you can put them in your tunnels, and you can get these things and just run them all over the place. These were about $7 when I bought them because I didn't want to steal one off somebody's car. But then you've got a power cord, and then just your old video cable, and that's it. That's all there is to it. You plug it in, you stick them all over your layout, and then you run all these little wires. You can daisy chain all the power supply so it all cuts off at once, blowing all the USBs back in, all the video cables back in, and just sit there and click and look all over your layout from some central point. Really, really inexpensive. So at the National Narrow Gauge, one host, Burr Stewart, there, he has almost all online operating sessions, a bigger layout. The second host, Gary Jordan, had a little bitty Gilpin tram, and it was kind of spread through whatever his wife would let him have in 2 little rooms there. But again, he set up all these little Apple phones and just ran it. There's also a really good Model Railroading 101 remote virtual ops session concept on there as well. And if anybody needs the things, but you can go online and see a lot of these things once you start searching around for them and see what people are doing. These are the ones that just popped in because of the convention. So you have an operating session for tomorrow night. 2 operators not going to make it, and they cancel at the last minute. You can now call an operator in Alabama, one in Kentucky at the last minute, and then you want them to operate the main line. And so, like I said, they call for a brakeman on site, and you just, sooner or later, we are going to have brakemen and engineers when these things keep going there. And a club member visiting the in-laws, you can call him up, and he can go in the hotel room, and he can operate your layout because he already knows where the stations and everything are. So you don't, these add-in people, it's still nice to have us all get together to operate, but if you're short people, doesn't take much of any money, a little bit of technology, not a lot, but you can have your layout where people can operate it from wherever. So the remote operators can now talk, and a lot of these people set it up as Zoom meetings. How many people have y'all gotten sucked into a Zoom meeting before? Yeah, that is god awful. But anyway, it would be a lot better if you were running a layout than listening to somebody dribble about some PR thing. But anyway, you can look on there and you can see how the cameras are set up in the top section there. And you can just blow up whichever one you need wherever your train is going around the layout there. And you could put in a layout diagram so you can show everybody where the cameras sit. And then you can see each other and you can talk and, do I have clearance here? And same things if you were sitting there talking to them about. Yes. Parallel. So the pandemic definitely didn't slow it down, but all this stuff was already there. And how many people think the model railroad hobby is on the front of technology? Not a clue, not even a remote chance. You take these other people, they are so many light years ahead of us. And one of the things I was going to say is to get, let's have everybody under age 35 stand up and tell us what they're working on. Oh, well, no, let's keep going. Okay. So anyway, we're not the early adopters by a long, long shot, but we can afford stuff. But thinking through it, so anytime you're picking up something, Scott Perry, one of my favorite jokes in the world, Scott Perry was here, and I said, I need to turn some drivers. I can't get HO3 drivers. He said, well, I've got a lathe. You can borrow it. I don't want to learn to operate a lathe, so I'll give you the manual. How big's the manual? 850 pages. No, I'm out. That's not going to work. I said, let me just come over to your house and see how it works. And Scott Perry said, well, I've had it 5 years. I've never turned it on. I don't know anything about it. I said, no, I'm not teaching you to use your lathe. You're supposed to teach me. And so Scott Perry was here last month or month before last, and he still has never used his lathe. So, and they're not cheap. So now we've scratched through remote operation. So now the part that I would actually want to talk about, hopefully I still can. So now we're going to talk about POV. So POV for model railroading typically means pushing a car. That stands for point of view. So you're looking from a point of view, and this is when I first set the one up on my layout there, and I wanted to show you all a video, but I'll put it up online. Hopefully I'll have it tied into the pilgrimage. Mike's already beat me once, but I had to put this together, so I'm going to get my pilgrimage site up pretty quickly here. But anyway, you have the cars. So point of view is running a locomotive through the view of the cab of the locomotive. There's several videos out there that show point of view cameras being used on there, but we didn't bring a lot of them in here. Most of them are like 30 or 40 minutes. Once the people set it up, they just want to run and run and run. But there's some shorter ones on there as well. And if we get through, I'll come back. The little one at the bottom is 2 minutes and 17 seconds. And it runs pretty good, but you can go through and just run this layout. You can pull up the next station. You can watch for all of Tom Gordon's signals and wait for the signal to turn green. You can look down and see the oncoming turnouts to see if they're turned for you. Cruise along. You can see that other train and hope it's going to take the siding and hope it's going to take the siding, kind of like the real guys do. So a brief review of point of view history. So larger scales have had large camcorders that shoved around flat cars since the 1970s. These allow recording, but not real-time transmission while you're running it. Then the size of the camera reduced as well as the circuit board. However, the signal still went through the rails, resulting in a lot of static. So the transmitters began to improve, but the signal still required a large antenna, and this required pushing in a car with an antenna, which about the only thing it would fit in would be an RDC. DC rail, there was no requirement for a large battery source for it, but how many of y'all have seen Dad's car when he runs there and he runs it over the layout? Still super, super cool. But, and I've got it up here, is his RDC. He doesn't run it much anymore, but you could actually sit over at the monitor and sit there and watch the train come from behind your head over your shoulder and keep going around the track. But it had the big camera sticking out the front. Not a huge camera. The camera wasn't the problem. It was the damn antenna was the problem there. And he had another car behind it that had some huge battery because he got so much flickering because the emitter wasn't very good, or the transmitter wasn't, and the receiver wouldn't pick up, and it interfered with everything in the room. And so while the camera and the board could be fairly small, you were still getting hung up by these antennas. So this one has a little smaller antenna, but still takes a lot of cargo with it, and it was still real fuzzy. The one on the other side, that's the antenna, and that big plate is what stood up that kept it from going into any regular locomotives there. And so it's up here if anybody wants to see the way it was before. And then the display was still real choppy. So now elsewhere in the world, they have a technology called FPV. So first person view. So it's very unpopular in other hobbies with radio controlled airplanes, and especially, you guessed it, drones. So these guys, we are just the most calm people in the world. These guys are nuts. I mean, these guys are really, really crazy. They'll take a $2,500 drone, fly it out, and the sucker just disappears and they never see it again. So what we're doing, and we think, oh my God, you're not going to burn out a decoder. Imagine if $2,500 just ran away. If they can track it, you got to get to it there. And sometimes, and it's supposed to come back and land in you back in exactly the same place when the battery's running out. But people I've talked to, most of them have lost one, and they aren't cheap. And so anyway, these drones are flying all over the place there. Well, when you go look, the camera is just, hey, there's a camera on the bottom of it. They want their rotors and their pistons and their auto gyrate and their glide patterns and all this other stuff. They don't really care. The camera's there, but they just stick a camera on there. So when I went online and started talking to people about it, the camera, it goes, well, the camera will come up on your flight controller. Well, I don't have a flight controller. I'm running a steam locomotive there. No, you don't want to do that. You got to have a flight controller. I have no use for a flight controller. So it took me a year to kind of work around and figure out this. There's no technology here. You just plug it in and the sucker works. But I went round and round until I could prove that. So now all the GoPro, the people who get on their bicycle and take videos of them running into a fence or something, those people they're coming out dime a dozen. They're all over the place there. And so FPV, first person view, when it comes to flying a drone, essentially it means that the pilots of the drone see what the drone sees. Traditionally, drones differ from this as they are piloted through the pilot's perspective from the ground. And so watching it, so now the pilots are flying around and they can actually see where they're going. FPV, first person view for us, means running a locomotive. This means the engineers see exactly what the locomotive sees. Traditional engineers are more like the hovering helicopter view if you've ever done simulators there. This time now you're on the ground running the locomotive, first person watching it. So then we send off when we get camera, transmitters, antennas there. We're the two problems. We want the video. We don't care about the camera. We just want to get video is what we want to see. So where are you going to hide that antenna? Remember the RDC with the big plate? Having that sticking out the top of your smokestack is not going to be that great. So we were still waiting a little bit, but the transmitter now is just a smaller than a postage stamp. So we got these little bitty things there. We're working forward. It's, So, should ask. So here is that exact thing I've got right here. And that's what most of the videos I've done on my layout are still being pushed with this because HON3, believe it or not, has kind of small boilers. So I was still having a little trouble with the boiler and even sticking that in the cab of a locomotive, which you're going to be staring at the firebox most of the time. But even that was a little tricky, but this thing works great if you're willing to shove it around the track. And of course, you can hook that up to your keep alives and everything, get a great signal. And we're going to talk about here, I think I don't want to ruin my other slides. The one it'll fit in. It's not dependent on scale, so whatever you can shove it into, if you want to put it in the front of a rotary, you could probably put it in an N-scale rotary for that kind of stuff, but it's moving on. So there's a little thing you can see, the antenna on the top. I chopped off part of it there. You got your little bitty camera on the front. You screwed on that little bitty transmitter on the back. And really at this point in time, all you really need to have for a wireless one is power. Okay, well, power. Well, what are you talking about power? Well, 5 to 30 volts. You can vary power tremendously, and it's not going to affect this thing. It couldn't care less. You do need DC, but if any of you know what a little bridge rectifier is, that's all you need. These things pull milliamps in there. So you can just hook a tiny, tiny bridge rectifier and stick this in the locomotive. So then you've got, this is a smaller version that I've got up here that by the time I started figuring out how it worked, I figured I could get one for about 2/3 the size. These cameras are running about 20 bucks. $20. How much is your decoder? Never mind. So anyway, $20 for there with a transmitter with it. And then you have the little thing here, a SkyDrive. So that plugs into usually your cell phones, but it can plug into your PC as well, or your laptop as well, and you can hook it in. Right now, it is Droid technology. There were a few places that are starting to pull up with Apple stuff. Why Apple second? No idea. But anyway, it's got the Droids that have been out for a long time. These things are going to cost you somewhere around $15. And so now we've got 35 system to put in video in your locomotives. So that one up there, I've got the little one up here. It's about half the size, but the board's a little bit big, so it still wasn't ideal. The SkyDroid, so receiver attaches USB, da da da. Obviously, for twice the price or more, you can get one for Apple because for the same quality, you're always going to pay twice the price. Just a little kick at all the Apple people here. So technicals. Now you have the 5 to 30 volt DC power of the camera. Attached to your device. Watch the video from the rail is dependent. Watching video from rail is dependent on LocoNet. As long as you have track power, you don't care what else is going on for this thing. It goes straight wirelessly. The power source. Matter as we talked. Power in your decoder could turn it on and off. I have not wired this through my decoder yet. The decoder, I think, puts out 100 milliamps per F channel in there. This thing can run at 60, 80, or 200. So I don't want to burn one out until I get there. And the other thing on here, the reason I stand up and give this talk is hopefully some of you people will be interested in it. And I don't have to learn all this crap. You can learn half of it, and then I'll learn the other half. And I'll be glad to help you along. But we're not talking about money here. We're just talking about thinking and how much time you want to devote to this little niche there. So drones usually use about 2 to 4 watts, running 14 volts. So it actually, like I said, when I started calculating and finding data on the camera, nobody talks about the camera. They all talk about the drones. But it runs at 60 milliamps, 80, and 200 milliamps, I think, is the power that it takes. So the receivers here, I finally found one of the iPhones there. Plugs right into your iPhone. It's going to run you 2 or 3 times the cost of a regular Droid one. So now well, that's still kind of big. So looked online. This camera is 5 millimeters by 5 millimeters. I don't know if y'all remember how big a centimeter is, 2.54 something centimeter. Anyway, it is really, really small. And it broadcasts, you think, well, the picture, it broadcasts 1,000 lines per inch, which is more than your TV can project. So this is much better than most of the cameras we're all using. It's 5 by 5 millimeters, and they are still dirt cheap. So now then, let's go outside. Here we go. Now we're coming back into my field there. We're going to go outside and see what the real geeks are doing now. So they have a camera, and they got a little bitty camera, and they put it in a little plastic bubble, and they shove it in your mouth. And so when they shove it in your mouth, they video for a couple of hours there, and they watch it bump and tumble and run on through, and then drop out into the pot, and then they fish it out. But while that is great, now these things are out there. You can grab one, cut it open, and supposedly fairly simple. Great article if any of y'all want to write one for the Southerner or their article on how to take this out of somebody's butt and use it in a thing. But it's out there. So now we're going to switch over to this. But this sucker required a big belt that the people wear to be able to catch the transmission because the transmitter was not that powerful. So it would pick up across here. You could do it real time, but it would record things on there. So then I'm sitting here going through all this stuff, thinking about this talk and figuring out how I could put it up. And we go in there and we have one of the reps come in and he sits down to talk to us and everything. And he whips this thing out, that. So this right here is a capso cam. Any of y'all swallow it, don't give it back to them. Let's make sure you save it because we want to get it back. So anyway, I told the guy, I said, that's great, but I'm really going to need one to really be able, I don't order these things anyway. I'm not that kind of doctor. But anyway, I said, really get one. And he goes, well, I could get you a demo. I got a demo. And so now this thing isn't even out there yet, but y'all got to look at, I want it back. But this thing here, when you look at it, Come on. Am I going to lose my thing here? Okay, I'm going to have to tell you about it. That's bad. Okay, so how do we get it back just straight camera? Is the camera on me? I guess the camera's on me still. Can we put the camera? Nah. Ah, there it went. You know, it take me probably 6 hours after I got started to show you how it works. Yeah. Yeah, just go to the camera, full screen. But so I'm sitting here talking to this guy looking at this thing, and I've been looking up some on the these camcorders, and this is just to give you an idea of where we're probably heading. That's close. Good. Okay. So anyway, this thing here, when when he showed it to me, it has two cell batteries, two coin batteries in the top that supply 17 hours of power for this thing. And then the next step down here, if you look at it, has a 4 cameras. This thing has 4 very high quality cameras built into it. It'll take 360 degrees. And if you can see it, it's just between the LEDs. There are 8 LEDs in here and this bottom chip in there. And so the little part right in the middle is where the 4 cameras are built into it. And then the bottom part is basically a USB flash drive that'll store 115 minutes. So in HON3 world, that means I can yank my smokestack off, stick this thing in the top in place of my smokestack. I can see what's behind the train, right, left, what's ahead of my train, and I can watch 360 degrees as it's running down the road. And that is my entire camera. Run it down to a transmitter, and I'm done. I don't need anything else done with my locomotive, anything else geared up. And I can see real time exactly where the train is, was, will be, and who's coming at me. And folks, that's where we're headed. I can see that before too long, and especially they say, well, you know, there's nothing in it for the younger generation for model railroading. Oh yeah, they'll eat this stuff up. So you can get there and you can put a train on your track, or they can bring a train over, because this is independent of your railroad. All you really need to make this stuff up here happen is good scenery. And so you put it on there, and they can snake through your layout, and they can be, God knows where, they can be sitting on a bus, and they can run your layout while they're on a bus riding through town there, or in the back of class back there. And while they're not paying attention to anything like they probably do anyway, they can sit in the back of class and run locomotive on your layout. And so anybody jumping on board, love to work with anybody, but I can see that this is something the next generation is probably going to do. And you're real time, if you get a chance to look at these videos online, it looks really, really cool watching these nice layouts. Joe? In order to do this, I have to order this. So this is not actually out there yet. I had one hell of a time just finding out what the name of it was, because I forgot to bring the guy's card with me. And so this isn't out there real time yet, but they've used it. It's already passed the Food and Drug Administration, all the testing, everything's done. But when I go out and order this, it's probably going to cost you as the patient, I would guess somewhere in the $1,000 to $2,500 range. They're making a big profit off of it. There's a lot of stuff in here. And so the parts are going to be minuscule compared to all the cost and everything else. And, you know, insuring one of these things so it doesn't get plugged up in somebody, and then I have to operate on them and take them out. And I do that. That part of this thing, I go in and pull this out of somebody's intestine where it gets stuck. Yeah. So anyway, yeah. So it's going to be a lot smaller than that. Whether something like this, if you wanted to buy it and cut it apart, which I haven't cut it apart because I want to bring it in and show all you people there, but I will certainly cut this sucker apart. But when you get it in there and you're buying the parts of it, this camera can't cost more than $100 or so for the 4 camera set, or else they could not make a profit on this. So the technology's there, the price is right. You just got to figure out how to use it. Yeah. So, oh, the other thing I didn't mention is with the this thing right here, is that No, the little cameras here, supposedly these cameras, and I don't put this in, but supposedly it'll be 100-kilometer range on it. And so that is 6.2 miles or something there is the range on these things that'll pick it up. Now, very few of us, again, how often have you operated your layout real time 6.2 miles away? Right. So anyway, the transmission is not a problem for these transmitters we have now. They will broadcast wherever you need them in your layout. You're not confined to tunnels behind the furnace, you know, down through this and that. They'll make that part there. All you got to do is process the signal and make sure you have enough of it so that you can run it. But this technology doesn't require something different on your layout. Somebody can bring this to your house, and most of the things you see online, or some geek brought it over and put it on some modules at a train show, and they're running all up and down these modules that have had no customization whatsoever. They just run them. This one right have a detector in it. The other one did, but you can see what the antenna was. They don't find a need for this because they're going to take this long wand with a magnet, stick it down in the toilet, put it in a little box, send it back, and their people are going to read it, and that's how they make their money. And so this doesn't really, isn't their cost thing there. It's reading it and have somebody watching it and tell you what's wrong with your abdomen there. So with these things right here, they don't need it transmitted because they want you to send it to them. They don't want you to sit there and watch on TV and watch it going through your intestine all. But on their website, the review thing said they would expect within a year that this thing would be transmitting. And so you would look at real-time stuff as it's going through there. The technology is already there. You just got to, some people find it hard to swallow. Sorry. Yeah, sorry. But yeah, but anyway, that's all I really had. Hopefully somebody got interested in something. It wasn't as much teaching as just, that's where I see things. If anybody wants to have a follow-up clinic, tell them what they implemented, I'll be there for it.
Thank you. By the way, he has a lot of stuff up here you can come look at as we wind down and start leaving to beat the traffic. But please come up here and look at it. It's this is all kind of neat stuff. So yeah. Any other thing? Oh, we have one more.
This evening that Bill Matheson, longtime member, and a longtime member of the North Atlanta Rail Barons, Bill Matheson's wife, Lori, passed away, 2 days ago? 2 days ago. So please keep his family in your prayers. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Anyway, it's good to stay up to date on those kind of things. So. Anything else before we go? All right, go out and beat the traffic. We'll see y'all next month. Thank you.